Well, good morning, everyone. George is on a well-deserved vacation, and as the summer draws to a close, the war in Iraq is once again dominating the agenda here in Washington. In a few days, Congress and the president will begin debating some fundamental questions. Is the troop surge ordered by the president in January working? Should it? Can it be sustained? Or is it now time to withdraw from Iraq? We're joined now by two leading members of the Senate Armed Services Committee here in the studio. Virginia Democratic Senator Jim Webb, and from Austin, Texas, Republican John Cornyn. Welcome back to This Week, both of you gentlemen.
Thank you.
Well, let's start with Vietnam, because President Bush kicked off the debate by doubling his rhetorical bets on Iraq again this week. After years of insisting that Iraq is not like Vietnam, the president now says it is like Vietnam, arguing that if American troops withdraw, Iraqis could face the same kind of human rights catastrophe the people of Southeast Asia suffered in the 1970s.
One unmistakable legacy of Vietnam is that the price of America's withdrawal was paid by millions of innocent citizens whose agonies would add to our vocabulary new terms like boat people, re-education camps, and killing fields.
Senator Webb, you're a Vietnam veteran, won the Navy Cross there, and have made no secret over the years that you feel that America betrayed the Vietnamese people and abandoned them to a cruel fate. Isn't that what the president is saying here will happen to the Iraqis if we withdraw?
Well, I think that I may be one of the few people in government who still, on the one hand, strongly believe in what we attempted to do in Vietnam, and on the other hand, from the beginning, have strongly warned against the strategic blunder of going into Iraq. They simply are not comparable. If you look at even the opinions of the American people, despite the way that the Vietnam War ended, 8 years after the Gulf of Tonkin in 1972, the American people, by a margin of 74 to 11%, still believed that it was important that South Vietnam not fall to communism. The overall strategic objective was strong. The implementation became flawed. In Iraq, we have a reverse situation. We have an overall strategic objective that was not directly related to what we were attempting to do in the war against international terrorism. We have good people implementing a bad strategy. It's just not the same situation. And in terms of
now that we're there,
in terms of the aftermath, no one in a responsible position in government is saying that we should pull the plug in Iraq and have a precipitous withdrawal. What we're trying to do is to say, eventually, we have to withdraw from Iraq. We have to draw down our troops. Even the military realities of the surge, which have upswung the cycles of deployment, are going to mandate that we reduce our troops and eventually leave. We're not going to have stability in that region until the American troops are out of Iraq. We have to do it in a way that brings in the other countries around the region, allows us to focus on international terrorism, and doesn't destabilize the region, but it must be done.
But practically, how would you propose the United States go about helping to prevent what could very well be a humanitarian catastrophe?
Well, here's where we are with the surge. Let's just start with that, because it's going to become the big issue that's debated over the next several weeks. We have a situation where the goals, if there were strategic goals, the goals of surge was to provide the Iraqi government with enough space to get itself up. And also, the clear objective stated by the president was that by December or November, I can't remember which month, I think it was November actually, that the Iraqis would be in control of all the provinces in Iraq. Those are not going to happen. So what we have is the same situation we've been dealing with for the last 4 years, where the United States military has controlled its tactical battle space, done an excellent job. The Iraqi government has fallen by the wayside. They're a very weak central government, much like the Lebanese were in the 1980s. And the Bush administration, this administration, has not vigorously pursued the diplomatic umbrella under which we can bring stability to the region.
So diplomacy may be the answer. Let me go to Senator Cornyn on that. Senator Cornyn, was it a good idea for the president to try to rally the American public to support the war in Iraq by saying, well, it's kind of like Vietnam?
Well, I think there are some, it is an appropriate analogy as far as the president attempted to use it in his speech. Senator Webb and I joined 92 others of our colleagues in the Senate in voting for an amendment that I offered before we left for August that said that we should do everything in our power to avoid a failed state in Iraq because of the danger to American security. And of course, we also laid out in that amendment the fact that there would be a vast humanitarian crisis, millions of people perhaps killed, refugees, putting a lot of pressure on the region. Of course, Iran being emboldened, as it already has been, to increase its domination of the region, and perhaps a regional conflict there, not the least of which would create a failed state where Al-Qaeda could use as a launching pad to kill more Americans. So I think the part of the analogy that is not apt is that when we left Vietnam, the enemy did not follow us here. They will follow us here if we allow Iraq to become a failed state and allow Al-Qaeda a launching pad to reorganize and to energize their activities around the world.